Mitch Roschelle is with us this morning. And what do you think the president needs to do at this point to restore confidence that they're not going to keep going up against these kinds of battles and ultimately not get anything done?
Just that. Restore confidence, get some sort of a win. What happened last week, you saw the market sell off because traders were seeing what was happening, didn't like the prospects that something was going to get done. Friday was a non-event because it was somewhat baked in. But right now they're looking for a win. They're looking for some momentum, and they're looking to get that optimism back.
See, I feel like most members do believe that tax cuts are going to be very important toward moving the needle on economic growth. So I feel like that there is some common ground when it comes to cutting taxes. But the border adjustment tax is an issue.
Yeah, the border adjustment tax is a big issue, and I said in the previous segment, the real challenge with that is it's a lot of the hypotheses is baked around a stronger dollar. And if that doesn't happen, we could have two things. We could have inflation, which actually they bake into some of the tax models that inflation will help pay for it, which seems kind of, I knew you'd laugh when I said that, Steve.
What's the point of the border adjustment tax anyway? I mean, they're talking about it would raise $1 trillion over 10 years. I get that as far as revenue. But Kevin Brady yesterday said really it wasn't that they needed to raise revenue, Steve. That wasn't the point.
Well, that is a point because they do worship the idols at the Congressional Budget Office that they have to have a certain amount of projected revenue over 10 years instead of saying if you get 4% growth, it's done. And this tax cut will do it. The other thing they're hung up on is trade. They think this will help our so-called trade balance. And they don't realize when you disrupt global supply chains, which are incredibly complex as companies export, import parts to make a product, that's why a typical car is going to go up $2,000, $2,500.
That's
right.
And so it's not just neat border.
Right.
And what are other countries
No, it's not neat, especially in the auto business. You make a really good point because in the auto business, you've got components that may go into the car. They cross the border 6, 7 times.
Oh, yep.
Maybe the seat is made in Mexico, so they've got components that have to go to Mexico, put in the seat, and then the seat goes over the border again.
Yeah.
You know, so it's back and forth. But come on, I mean, they could come up with a fee for that. They're not going to charge 7 times a levy.
Well, again,
I think they could figure that out.
This creates huge complexity, huge uncertainty. And why do that when you got to get a tax cut through to get this economy moving?
And there's other places they can look to generate revenue. They're talking about cutting fat. They're talking about cutting programs that aren't going to necessarily have an impact. They're talking about, I mean, the president's been talking about draining the swamp. There's all different ways to raise revenue and not do this. This is political suicide in many ways. There's no way this will get through.
John Kennedy and Ronald Reagan demonstrated. You don't tie yourselves to budget cuts. You pass the big tax cuts and then deal with other challenges and problems. If you tie it to cuts now in terms of budget cuts, you're not going to get it. You're going to get a puny bill. Do the big bill. The key thing is not Washington's revenue. Key thing is get the economy growing. When the economy grows, by golly, a lot of things are possible.
And the president promised substantial economic growth. It may not be as big as he says, though. A new survey from the National Association of Business Economics says the economy will grow 2.3% this year, 2.5% next year. These are both below. Well, look, you can't really look at this year, obviously, because they said 4% in 18.
Right.
But what do you think? Will we get to 4%? Is this
I think we have to get the rates lowered and get the economy jump-started. The one thing that's suspiciously silent in all the rhetoric is what about the $1 trillion that's offshore that we were going to bring back into the United States with maybe some sort of a tax amnesty to pump that money back into the economy to help jumpstart things.
Well, one of the issues with the health care plan is that they start $1 trillion lower because had they gotten health care through, they would have been able to take $880 billion of taxes out of Obamacare. And that was going to be a starting place for tax reports because that was an enormous tax cut in and of itself. They begin at a different place now, Steve.
They do. All the more reason then just throw away the rule book, go for a massive tax cut, reduce the rates, get that corporate rate down to 15, cut the individual rates, and say the heck with everything else. Because that economy next year will grow more than 2.5 if you have a massive tax cut and people start investing now. And that gets to another important point. Make it retroactive to January 1st of this year.
And Kevin Brady yesterday asked him that, and he said to me, that's what we're aiming for. So he continues to say that's what we're aiming for. He's not poo-pooing it. I mean, there's still a chance that it could be retroactive. But I do question that. I question if it's going to be retroactive.
Well, I think sometimes the strategy is let's put something big out there so that they can then negotiate on something, and if that comes back, they can get the rest of it passed, then maybe that's the thing to do. I think they're going to have to ask for more than they plan to get.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to jumpstart now, you got to make it retroactive. right? You're not going to get those economic growth numbers if you don't make it retroactive.
And yet, Stephen Mnuchin, when he joined us a couple of weeks ago, said the real impact's going to be in 18, not 17.
Right.
But you
So
got
are they taking expectations down?
But to plan for 18, you have to know what the rules are in 2017.
Right.
All right, that's all great points.